Let's Talk Tunnelling is produced by XRJV and proudly sponsored by DC Adams Group, Why Safety Matters. No, that's awesome, mate. Hey, this is my next question to you. I hope I'm not nailing you with all these questions. I've actually written a few down while you were talking too, so I'll hit you up about them. But I suppose my next one is the issue around silica dust and, the awareness that's out there now and what we're doing to prevent and eliminate those issues. What's your thoughts on that, if you don't mind?
I was probably one of the lucky ones, like early, my first job. As I said to you before, we had a roadhead and it was real dusty, so we tried steam, we tried water, tried all sorts to keep the dust down. We couldn't do it, so the union being quite strong in those days, turned around and hit the management up, which was government. So the government said, we better look into this. So they turned around and brought all these people in, DSIR, I think they were, and they did all these tests and while the machine was cutting everything else. Then they went away and they came back and they said after a while, and they said, look, you got to stop work. You shouldn't do this job. The silica dust was that high. And I think they mentioned something like 0.5 microns in size of the stuff that goes into your lungs or smaller. So this is worse than that. So then they told us a story about 1968. 1968, they did a tunnel in southern states in America, and it was a roadheader job. And they only hired black workers. And the first guy died 6 weeks after they started. It was through silicosis, and they said, and this tunnel here is 5 times worse than that. So they said we shouldn't do the job, but because it was an essential job, it had to be done. So they come back and said, look, you can use the Raycal helmets, or you can turn around and wear these double filtered masks. So the masks are the way to go. So we wore the masks, and they said don't take them off until 20 minutes after the radiator cuts, and that give you time for the silica to be gone, so to be sucked out. And I can honestly say the 3 years I was there, mate, no one ever took that dust mask off it, and everyone came out, and we got tested, we got x-rayed and stuff like that, and no one came out crooked. And it was just education, and I've mentioned this many a time on different projects in Australia about this, but no one wanted them to take it on board. I don't know why, because as you know, and everyone else in the world knows, education is the main thing. That's your biggest asset. You tell people how bad it is, they either won't work in the industry or they'll protect themselves. So just wear your PPE, guys. Keep your eyes, keep your lungs intact, keep your ears intact. And go home when you're old and done like I am, mate. And I might be a bit stiff in the joints, but my lungs are 100%. So, I've looked after myself, and that was only because of the education. Wear the dust mask, and But I think the big companies got to come on board with it. Honestly, if they don't, well then, there's going to come a time when someone's going to start nailing people, and I think it's going to be as bad as asbestosis. So, yeah, education, mate.
That's it. Hey, you mentioned, and I wrote it down just because I wanted to come back to it, about how do you bring out the potential, and Phil hit you up at PRL about, getting them to express their full potential, and I'm not too sure if they know how good they are. So how did you go about that, and what sort of method did you use?
Well, when we started, we'd go down the back, and while we're doing they'd do the services. So there'd be 8 guys go down, and they'd go along, and they'd need a couple of clamps. So 2 guys would go back and get 2 clamps, and stuff like that, where they could have been doing other jobs. And so in the end, I said to Peter Crackley, so I said, you're going to do this job all by yourself? And he goes, oh, yeah, bloody old prick, this and that. I said, no, you're going to do it all by yourself. I said, I'll give you a hand. So he had a Manitou loader, and the holes for the services were drilled were drilled up front. So as you come back, it's just the pins were there. Just stick a pin in and pick the pipe up with the manatee and sit it on there, and then uncouple the rail, pull it back, wash it down, and that's all he had to do in an hour, you know. And when we got him doing that, then the other 5 or 6 guys were up doing something else, and then there might be 3 guys doing something like that, and end up being a one-man job and someone else doing this, and then it just chugged on, and then they realised how easy it was, and it was about using the old noggin, I guess, and once they realised they could do it, hey, the world was their oyster, you know. And I said to them themselves, you know, I said, you know, you guys are a lot better than what you're performing, you know. So, and as we got going, and as they realised their performance, you know, they just took it in leaps and bounds, and away they went. And you know, Tussie, eh?
Mm.
Well, Tuss was cleaning the invert up, and he had a little excavator, a little wee tiny excavator, and cleaned it. And we had a big 90-pound jack pick there to smash the rocks up. And I never used to hear this jack pick going, and I'm going, and you could see these big rocks falling out the side, and I said to Tuss, I said, mate, I don't hear that jack pick going, Tuss. And he goes, I don't use the jack pick, Andy. And I said, well, how do you break them up? He says, I just get the excavator and roll them in the centre of the tunnel, and when the TBM comes forward, I just get Jason to put the back leg down and crush the rock with the back leg of the TBM. And then he just put the excavator, get the little excavator and load it into the bucket. They flipped it up onto the conveyor. You know, and he is one smart dude, though, you know, that guy. And he's only a little guy, but he is a smart dude. And you turn around and you think, well, that's using your head, eh? You know, why is the little guy going to pick up a 90-pound jackhammer and rattle away all day and all he had to use the stuff around him? So, and that's the sort of thing, eh? You know, people are going to realise their potential, you know. You know, I don't know if there's any other industry that's close to tunnelling, well, underground work. You know, mining's very close, I guess, but, you know, as close as it is, it's totally different. Coal mining, same thing, it's underground, but it's a totally different application. But for me, the little bit of mining I didn't sort of take to it. The coal mining I didn't take to it. It was just the job, but tunnelling for me was a passion. It was probably because it was my first underground job, and I really liked it, and I never got rid of that fire for it. But I don't know if there's anything, because, you know, I'd worked in the bush and we'd fall in big remote trees, mate, that, you know, you get three logs, 3 loads out of one tree. You know, something that's over 1,000 years old. You know, I look back now and I kick myself. I could never do it again, you know. But, and for that was us, you know, that was our life. We thought, yeah, no, this is great. You know, we'll knock this thing over and we'll send it to the mill and get it all cut up and everything else. And then you go into tunnelling and it was just totally different, you know. And yeah, I don't know. I don't think there's anything that's totally anything close to tunnelling.
Mm.
You know?
Yeah, I call it a unique profession. And I suppose that's why I'm doing what I'm doing, to bring that uniqueness out. And I suppose talking to people like yourself to be able to talk about similar jobs that everyone else is talking, or same jobs that everyone else is talking about, but having a different perspective, I think is important as well. I suppose the next question I wanted to ask you, Andy, was about this A-grade ticket and the significance of that. And as you know, back in New Zealand, a ticket being quite an important qualification. So can you give us what's an A-grade ticket and why do you need it in tunnelling?
Well, it's always been in New Zealand as far as I can remember. You know, when I first started in the 70s, I think it was around probably, I don't know whether it was around the 60s or not, but it was, you know, when I first started to get into a B grade and an A grade, you had to have at least 3 years underground, I think with 2 years drill and blast experience. And then you had to know the Act and the regulations. And if you didn't know the Act and regulations, you weren't going to get the ticket, no matter how well you knew the job. It's just, you know, you had to know the Act and regulations, you know, and so that was something you had to study.
Is that why it took Dad 7 times to get it?
Yeah, well, yeah, I think you might have been thinking about other actions, no, but but it was hard, eh? You know, like I thought it was hard, but man, now I've gone through doing some of these modules they've got, and there's to do with health and safety. There's all sorts. There's just, and it's a big money making thing. But the thing that really hacks me off about it at the moment is that we're working under mining regulations and coal mining regulations, and there's not a coal mine going in New Zealand, not an underground coal mine working in New Zealand, and it all pertains to coal mining. Whereas when we were tunneling back in the day, in our days, it was all we came under Tunneling and Tunneling and Quarries Act, and then these things, that part of the act was, the law was that you had to have the regulations on the wall, and there was this massive big sheet, I think it was printed on some sort of cloth, and it was hung on the wall, and everything in that pertained to tunneling was in there. And then if you ever wanted to look at it, like ventilation standards, whatever it was all there. So it was all there in black and white, and that had to be on the walls. But now, I went and upgraded mine because I had a lifelong ticket. I had to set a few different things. And to be honest with you, man, if I wasn't in that room with a heap of other people, there's no way I would have passed today. There's just no way, because I was never academic and everything else, but I'd sort of gone past the passion, as I had for years. And at the moment, like this job, I'm going back down south. At the moment, Dave Owers is waiting for his A ticket, and they've been mucking around since July last year, and he's done everything he can do, but they're just mucking around. They're mucking around with his life, and it all pertains to coal mining, and there's no underground coal mine. So you can go anywhere in the world and work in any tunnelling job without having these things, and come to New Zealand and you've got to have it. And I think it's a big bugbear with these projects that are coming up in Auckland, because they've got to run these guys through these things, and there's there's hours and hours and hours of study, And if you're like me and you can't retain it, then you're going to struggle big time. But other people just read it, bang, got it,
Yeah.
But I don't think you need a ticket to tell you you're any good, eh? You've seen people that have worked underground for years and years and years, and there are a lot of people that are better than others, And just it's not because you worked underground doesn't make you any good at it. It's what you've done and the passion you have what makes you good at whatever you do. Tickets don't mean anything. I don't believe anyway.
I think I know, especially the stuff that I've been doing lately and what I've been, trying to develop in the training space and the qualification space too. And, I understand people like yourself that, struggle with the paperwork and things like that. And I know Dad did, and hence why we sort of laugh now that, it took him a few times or a few goes to have a go. And I remember, getting my ass kicked for being around the table when he was trying to write stuff and put things down, and quite a few of you is coming over to give him a hand. But just interpreting it or putting it on paper was his hardest thing. He could tell you till the cows come home of how to do the job.
Yep.
And I suppose that's something that I've identified in the stuff that I wanted to do is knowing that it is hard for us, that left school without a real desire to do paperwork. It's more to be more hands-on. But it's interesting to know what's happening in New Zealand, especially for people that are in tunnelling and know that, the seriousness of this unique industry. It's different. And like you said, there's nothing that compares to it. So understanding it is so important, and the education behind it.
But it's a grey matter in your head to say, oh, this is right or this is wrong. Don't just do it because someone tells you to do it. Do it because it needs to be done, and do it in a safe manner. Like one thing I have learned about tunnelling, and it's probably getting off it a bit, but in Sydney there, I learned on the road headers and on the TBMs that you need to put rock bolts in, because if you don't, you ought to seen that black mudstone that sits up and behind the sandstone. Well, the years I worked there, I learned that if you didn't have a metre or more that black stuff would push that sandstone out, you know. It might look good, it might look real, you know, but then all of a sudden it might take weeks, it might take months, but it will drop out. So if you put a rock bolt in, even when we were hand bolting, you put a rock bolt in, you could gauge how far up the stuff was, you know. You whack a bolt in, well, that holds that, you know. And it's reading the ground and stuff, you know, like TBMs. We used to see little feathers of sandstone would come down like a little feather, and you'd watch it, and you knew it was going to burst, and it would either drop out or it would go down the other end, you know. So it's, and this is about learning. Hey, this is the things that you got to learn, and if you haven't got that passion to learn it or study it, and let's say it takes a few minutes, walk down the tunnel, look at everything, you know, see if anything's changed. Like I tell my guys, if it's changed, if it feels like it's changed, you think it's changed, it probably has changed. You know, so it's all about the passion you have for the job and how much you like it and everything else, and how much you want to go home every day. If you're just going to go down there with your head down and look at the phone and kick stones on the way down, well then, you know, you got to keep your eyes open. You might get run over by a truck, you know. So be alert, yeah.
That's dead right. You know, what I wanted to ask you too now was, I suppose, a question that I've asked all the guys that have come on, all the people that have come on. If there was something, if you could write something down with all the knowledge and all the projects you've been on and all the experience you've got now, if you could write something down on a piece of paper and send it back to 77 when you first started that job, and young Andy that turned up on that muck pile heap and then was able to go down the hole, and you were able to get a hold of that piece of paper, what would be one of the things that you would write on that?
Young people, well, I would say, when you walk out the door to go to work, leave your home life at home. Try to forget about it. Don't drag your garbage with you. And when you walk off the job at night, leave the shit at work. Don't drag anything backwards and forwards. Leave it where it belongs. Your wife, last thing, your wife, she's not going to understand what you're talking about. Leave it at work. Discuss your work with the workmates that understand. Same at home. Don't take your personal life to work to upset yourself or upset someone else, or just keep it private, you know. But don't drag it around with you. It's a lot of stuff that you don't need to, you know. Keep work at work and keep home at home, and concentrate on what you're doing. That's all I've got to say about it, and that's what I've done. I've trained myself to do it, you know, and I've told a lot of people to do it, you know, and it's up to them whether they do or not, but that's the best advice I can think, you know.
Good on you. No, thank you for that. I reflect back to something like that for me, and that's something that I've really tried to do. I suppose the stuff that I'm doing now is a bit more public, but I believe in that too. You know, I was a very private person. I sort of shot over to WA and was sort of not hiding out, but almost felt, you know, there was no need to share some of the stuff that I'd gone through, and obviously the things I went through with losing James and you know, now with Dad. But I suppose you know, there's areas there too that I still do keep private because I want to. And I do agree. There's stuff that I see out there now, I hear, and I think, fuck, really? Yeah.
But I think too, though, Della, say, like, I mean, you're in a totally different situation as far as James and your dad goes, and you know, I mean, shit, man, to bottle that up, I mean, that would be pretty tough, all right? You know, like, you know, my heart goes out to you, still does, every time I think of those two guys, you know, and because I knew you guys quite young, and you know, when I went to Cromwell, I stayed with your mum and dad the first night I arrived, the first 2 nights, and you know, like, I mean, and then James went away to school, joined the army, and so I think I only saw him a couple of times. And the next one we were going up to his funeral. Oh man, that was horrid, you know. And I remember saying to Ned, I don't know what to say. And your mum goes, "What?" I says, "I'm lost for words. I don't know what to say to you guys," you know. And it was hard. It was heart wrenching, you know, to see the hurt, you know. Yeah.
I suppose, yeah. Well, and I'm getting to this now because I was sort of looking for an opening for this, and I suppose, you know, I wrote it down in the questions that I sent you about, stories of the old man, and even with the talks that I've been doing, it's been really interesting to be able to share our upbringing. And the thing about our house in Antimony Crescent there, 47, I still remember it. And there are quite a few people like yourself. When I got up for school the next morning, there'd be someone there, and the old man and the old lady always had a feed ready, and the fridge was full and the cupboard was full. I suppose the thing that I wanted to get to was how we were brought up, and with Dad, and having a very adventurous life. A lot of the stuff that he had around home, and you would have known his garden right around, even the front garden was turnip tops and kamo, and we had our dog kennels and everything like that, and he had rearranged the clothesline into a bit of a hanger for pigs and eels. So,
for sure.
Yeah, but I suppose I've got some great memories of Cromwell, and especially the old man and some of the antics he got up to. And I know that I'm going to get a few more of you fellas on, like the likes of Rudy and even Alan and stuff like that. But what's your take on the old man? Give us a story.
Oh, you've heard the story, but a lot of people haven't. But you remember Kit Carson?
Yeah.
Your dad and Kit were always trying to pull the wool over each other's eyes. Anyway, your dad says to Kit there, "Hey, Kit, you got any fish? Got any harpoon or something like that?" And he goes, "Oh, yeah." So Kit turns up with some heads, and fish heads, and Jim has a feed, smoked a few, and these heads just kept rolling in, and the old man goes, "Geez, I'm getting pissed off with these fish heads, So anyway, wasn't long later, Kit says to Jim at work, he says, "Hey, Jim, can you get me a pig?" And Jim goes, "Yeah, no worries, When do you want it?" "Oh, a couple of weeks or whatever." So anyway, he goes, "Hey, getting on with that pig, Jim?" Jim goes, "I'll bring it around tomorrow." So he goes around in, he's got the sugar bag, and he hands it to Kit. Kit opens up the bag, and he goes, "Geez, Jim, they will fit pig heads." And he goes, "Well, when you bring the rest of the fish, I'll bring the rest of the pig." And but that was your dad, man. I'll tell you what, you have to be pretty quick to get one over him. So Kit, look at old Jim, But yeah, that was one of many. Phil Aiken could probably tell you a lot more, but a few other things, But some of the stories you wouldn't want to tell on these programs,
Yeah. In regards to what we're talking about.
I got one more story about your dad, if you want to hear that.
Yeah, for sure.
Playing league, And so your dad decided, Phil goes, "Hey, Jim, you want to come and play league?" And he goes, "Oh, I haven't played league before." And Phil, being the smart guy he is, turns around and says, "You're just the type of player we need." Jim goes, "What sort of player is that, Phil?" And he goes, "A real big dumb bastard, Oh, your dad turned around and he goes, So anyway, everyone had a bit of a giggle. So we turned up down Southland to play league. Your dad rocks out, how big he was, and he had the biggest shorts on, the biggest jersey, the socks down around his knees, missing teeth, and we were having our spiel. And Phil goes, "There's one thing that people hate. They can tackle Churchill, they can tackle this guy, tackle that guy. But when they came up against big guys, they don't like it. You can just see it on their face." Well, during the game, the old man got the ball, and he's running down the paddock, and like he could run, And these two Maori boys were there, and they saw him coming in. You could see their eyes go big, And they looked at him. By the time they looked, he had slammed his big mitt in this guy's cheek, dumped him on his back, flicked this other guy with his hip, and the guy was hanging on, give him a bit of a cow kick, bowled him off, and off he went and scored a try, And then after the game, I said to Phil, "They're right, man." I said, "Those young fellas there," I said, "they were like crapping themselves, and they saw Jim coming at him." And Jim goes, "Yeah." And he said, "And this is the last game I'm playing for this stink team," he says. And we thrashed him, Hey, a bit of tongue in cheek, And we would have had an awesome league player, man, big guy like that, and the way he could run,
I remember that game. I think we come down to watch. It was bloody raining that day, or it rained quite a bit down that way, But because I heard another story, and I remember it too, because obviously we had a boat for a short time back then too, and we had life jackets. but they were the vest ones. So when Dad didn't muck around. When he got something, he ended up going quality or nothing at all. He didn't go half-hearted. So we had these flash, almost like ski jackets, eh? You remember them? The full wraparound, sleeveless one. And because obviously we used to watch the Aussie stuff and Sirenen and all those sort of, even Blocker Roach and all them, and they used to wear those big pads, eh? And I remember when Dad signed up. So this is, like I said, I'm just a young kid, but you know what I was like with my old man. If he said jump, you jumped. So everything that he'd come out of his mouth, whether it was right or wrong, it was right. But I remember him going into the shed and, obviously we had to get everything ready and head down for this game. But I'll let you carry on with the story because you know exactly where I'm going with this.
Yeah, well, when we're getting dressed, the old man pulls out this life preserver and puts it on. I goes, "Yeah, you got there, Jimmy?" He goes, "Oh, I don't want to buy some pads, man. I'll just try these out, and if I like the game, I'll buy some decent pads." And I go, "Oh, yeah." So anyway, then everyone's going, "What?" Anyway, he puts it on and he plays the game. And, and everyone sort of just, couldn't believe it, but big buckles on them, zips and stuff. Anyway, he plays the game. Anyway, towards the end of the season, we're talking about what do you remember about the season? And Gavin Carroll was young, he was only 16 or something. And everyone's going, "Oh, I remember this, I remember that." And then Gavin goes, "Jim Adams getting dressed and putting on a life jacket, for his pads, And everyone goes, "Yeah, we forgot all about that, But, oh, yeah, man, I'd forgotten all about that until you brought it up.
No, well, that's your story reminded me, and this is the beauty, and this is why I wanted to do these, because I knew as soon as you say something, it would come up. But I do remember, and I also remember why he was doing that, because in his day he played for King Country, and as you know too, and he actually was coached by Colin Meads, and Colin Meads gave him the nickname Limpiness. Anyway, the old man, when he ran, what I was told and what I remember too, when I used to run away from him, he was all arms and legs, so his knees come up quite high. And I think it was quite well known too that he was all arms and legs when he ran, and all like this sort of running through. But he'd had a few big whacks in his day, so he had sort of cracked ribs and everything too, and his big nose was always bent anyway. But he put them on anyway. I remember going to work on a Saturday, or it might have been even a Sunday job, just a tidy up job and knock. And we went and picked up everyone, and Guppy jumped in. And he's talking to Dad, and Guppy had played, obviously, for the seniors, Cromwell seniors, on a Saturday. And he jumped in. And he's asking Dad, he goes, "Oh, well, Jim, how do you know if you've got broken ribs?" And, all of a sudden Dad become, a doctor. So he's like, "Oh, you can't breathe, and all this sort of stuff. And every time you move and all that." And Dad goes, Guppy goes, "Oh, I think I've got broken ribs." And he goes, "You know what you should have been wearing? A life jacket." Everyone laughed at me, but I know. Yeah. So yeah.
And like you sit back and you're thinking about these stories, man, and you could tell some stories. But you write a book about that guy,
Yeah,
such a funny guy. Yeah.
Yeah, funny you say that. Yeah.
Help anyone, and he's just such a big-hearted guy, and just very tragic what happened. It just pissed everyone off. It still pisses us off, But we always talk about it. About things we've done and the laughs we had, and he was always had something smarter, But he always there for everyone, helped everyone. Yeah.
Perfect, Andy. Hey, mate, I'm going to wrap this up. So, I really appreciate it. Your time's valuable and everything, and best of luck when you shoot down south tomorrow. And obviously, further on as well. But hopefully we can catch up soon anyway. But I appreciate everything you've said today. Thanks for coming on. Let's Talk Tunnelling, and I'll close it out there. Cheers, mate.
Cheers, mate. Kia ora, bro. Thank you.
Kia ora.